Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. There is a flower in the tropical rainforests of Central and South America that stands out for the striking shape of its red bracts, which resemble lips. This feature helps attract pollinators, such as butterflies and hummingbirds. These bracts are not true petals, but modified leaves that protect the actual flower, which is small and located inside. Fluffy cows exist as a result of breeding several high-quality cattle lines. This type of livestock has been selected for its appearance and its dense, soft coat, which requires special care and is highly valued in agricultural shows. Its characteristic look is achieved through genetics, controlled feeding, and grooming techniques that enhance its volume and texture. Only 2% of the Australian population lives within that yellow area. In fact, the vast majority of the population lives within about 31 miles of the coast. This is because the interior of the country is mostly arid and less habitable, concentrating people in coastal regions. Your nose is connected to the memory center of your brain. That is why smells trigger some of the most powerful memories. The olfactory system has a direct connection to areas related to emotions, which explains why certain scents can instantly evoke vivid memories. Indian households, specifically Indian women, own about 18,000 tons of gold in jewelry. To put that into perspective, it is more than double the gold held by the United States Federal Reserve, and about 11% of all the gold in the world. This metal holds deep cultural and economic value in India, especially in weddings and celebrations, where it is considered a symbol of wealth, security, and family heritage. The panda is the national animal of China. In fact, every panda in the world is property of China. If you see one outside the country, it is simply on loan. These agreements usually involve conservation programs and international cooperation to protect the species. In addition, zoos that receive them often pay annual fees and participate in research aimed at improving their reproduction and survival. A grizzly bear's jaw is so strong that its bite could crush a bowling ball. Its bite force can exceed 1,000 pounds per square inch, allowing it to break bones easily and access nutrient-rich marrow, a key source of energy in its diet. In addition, its powerful jaw muscles and teeth are adapted both for tearing meat and crushing hard foods like roots and nuts. Chocolate cosmos is a non-edible flower that smells like chocolate. Its sweet aroma is completely natural and makes it highly appreciated in gardening, although it is a delicate species that requires specific care to stay healthy. It is native to Mexico and, due to its rarity, was once considered extinct in the wild, being preserved thanks to human cultivation. Real diamonds do not appear on X-rays. This is because they are made of carbon, a low-density element that allows X-rays to pass through. For that reason, they can be difficult to detect in this type of medical or security imaging. However, depending on the equipment and settings, they may create slight contrasts, so they do not always go completely unnoticed. Cherries contain two compounds that inhibit tumor growth and even cause cancer cells to self-destruct without harming healthy cells. These effects have been observed in laboratory studies, but they do not replace medical treatments, although they do show the potential of certain natural compounds. Jaguars in the wild have been observed occasionally interacting with certain plants, including some roots with psychoactive properties. Although this behavior is not fully understood, it is believed that it could influence their sensory perception and behavior during hunting. There is a rare type of tree called the dragon's blood tree that contains red sap and appears to bleed when cut. This color is due to natural chemical compounds, and its resin has historically been used as dye, medicine, and even in varnishes. These trees mainly grow on islands such as Socotra, and their umbrella-like canopy helps reduce evaporation and protect the soil in extremely dry climates. A cockroach can live for several weeks without its head. This is possible because it breathes through small openings in its body and does not depend on its brain for immediate basic functions. It eventually dies from dehydration because it cannot drink water. In addition, its nervous system is distributed throughout its body, allowing it to maintain certain reflexes and movements even without its head for some time. Apple seeds contain a cyanide compound. It is present in the form of amygdalin and, in small amounts, does not pose a danger when consumed accidentally. However, crushing and consuming large quantities could release toxic substances, although in practice, it would require ingesting many seeds for it to become truly harmful. Being struck by lightning heats the skin to 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hotter than the surface of the sun. This extreme heat occurs in a fraction of a second and can instantly vaporize sweat, creating shock waves that cause severe internal damage, in addition to leaving patterns on the skin known as Lichtenberg figures. If all the Lego pieces ever made were stacked on top of each other, they would form a tower 10 times higher than the distance from here to the moon. The company has produced hundreds of billions of pieces since the mid-20th century, at such a massive rate that, on average, millions are produced every hour. That helps illustrate the absurd scale of a brand that became one of the most famous toys on the planet. All the gold obtained by humans would fit into 3.5 Olympic swimming pools. It is estimated that all the gold extracted throughout history forms a relatively small cube when compared to other resources, which explains its value and rarity. Most of that gold still exists in the form of bars, jewelry, or reserves, since this metal hardly degrades or is destroyed over time. 40% of all humans who have ever lived died before their first birthday. For much of history, infant mortality was extremely high due to disease, lack of hygiene, and limited medical advances. This figure has decreased significantly in modern times, thanks to vaccines, modern medicine, and improved living conditions. A remote African tribe donated cattle to the United States when they learned about the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in 2001. They were the Maasai of Kenya, who offered several cows as a symbol of support and solidarity. In their culture, cattle are one of the greatest forms of wealth, so the gesture had a particularly deep meaning. A Canadian named James Naismith invented basketball, which literally means basketball, in 1891. It took 21 years for someone to come up with the idea of putting a hole in the bottom of the baskets. At first, peach baskets with closed bottoms were used, so every time a point was scored, someone had to manually retrieve the ball. The boa constrictor is the only animal today whose common name is the same as its scientific name. In biological classification, it is called exactly boa constrictor, a rare case in zoology. This snake lives mainly in Central and South America and can grow several meters long, killing its prey by wrapping around it and squeezing until circulation stops. Lightning strikes the Earth 8.6 million times per day. That is about 100 per second. A lightning bolt contains enough energy to make 10,000 slices of toast. The temperature of a lightning bolt can exceed 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the sun, and its discharge heats the air so quickly that it produces the thunder we hear after the flash. A single teaspoon of honey represents the entire life's work of 12 bees. Each bee produces very small amounts over its lifetime, collecting nectar from thousands of flowers. This collective effort within the hive is what allows enough honey to be accumulated to feed the entire colony. In addition, bees transform nectar through enzymes and dehydrate it with their wings until it becomes stable honey that can be stored for long periods. Linguists say that the word "huh" is universal. This is because the situations in which it is used can be understood in any language. Studies comparing dozens of languages across different continents have found very similar sounds used to ask someone to repeat something or to express that something was not understood. Even isolated communities use an almost identical interjection, suggesting that it arises naturally in human conversation. Honey is the only food that does not spoil. This is due to its low moisture and high acidity, which prevent the growth of bacteria and microorganisms. Jars of honey have been found in ancient Egyptian tombs that, after thousands of years, were still safe for human consumption. Night vision goggles are green because we can see more shades of green than any other color. The human eye is especially sensitive to that range of the spectrum, which allows better detail to be distinguished in low-light conditions when the image is displayed in that color. In addition, green reduces visual fatigue during prolonged use and makes it easier to identify subtle contrasts in dark scenes. The first modern toilet was made by Thomas Crapper, which is where the English phrase for going to the bathroom comes from. Although his name became popular in this context, the toilet already existed before, and he mainly contributed to improving its design and spreading its use. His innovations helped standardize more efficient plumbing systems in growing cities during the industrial era. The entire country of Liechtenstein can be rented for $70,000 per night, with a minimum of 2 nights. The initiative was promoted by its tourism office for private events, business meetings, or special celebrations. The package can include the symbolic use of spaces within the small principality, tastings of local wine, and the ceremonial presence of the prince, in a country of only about 39,000 inhabitants. An ostrich's eye is larger than its brain. This large size allows it to detect predators from long distances on the savanna, making it one of its main defenses. In addition, its vision is so sharp that it can distinguish minimal movements even several miles away. In 1994, IBM released a mobile phone with a touchscreen that could send emails and faxes. Whatever that is, it is considered the first smartphone. It was called IBM Simon and also included a calendar, contact list, and basic applications, getting ahead of modern smartphones by years. Nomophobia is the fear of being away from your cell phone. The term comes from the English expression no mobile phone phobia and reflects the anxiety some people feel when they do not have access to their device, especially in an era where much of daily life depends on it. This phenomenon has become more common with the constant use of social media and messaging, affecting concentration and well-being in some cases. The Hawaiian alphabet has only 12 letters, which are A, E, I, O, U, H, K, L, M, N, P, and W. This system was standardized in the 19th century by missionaries, and its simplicity makes many words short and repetitive, giving the language a very distinctive and rhythmic sound. Frankie Muniz, Malcolm in Malcolm in the Middle, became a professional race car driver after the show ended. He competed in motorsport championships such as Formula BMW and Champ Car Atlantic, where he achieved good results. Although his career was affected by injuries, he continued participating in the world of motorsports for several years. There are gold pills that you can buy online for $425 each, which promise to make your excrement shine like gold. These capsules contain edible gold flakes, a material that the body does not digest and that is used more for curiosity or luxury than for any real benefit. The smallest known dinosaur measured about 2 inches long and had a skull of only 0.8 inches. It is Oculudentavis, a tiny animal discovered in amber in Myanmar in 2020. It was so small that its head could fit on the tip of a finger and probably weighed less than a hummingbird. For a time, it was thought to be the smallest known dinosaur, although later studies suggest it may have been a reptile very closely related to lizards. About 50,000 years ago, duck-like birds the size of horses called Dromornithidae roamed what is now Australia. These flightless birds could reach several feet in height and are believed to have been herbivores, forming part of a unique megafauna that disappeared after climate changes and the arrival of humans. Summer on Neptune lasts 40 years, but the average temperature is minus 328 degrees Fahrenheit. It is almost like being in Russia. This is because Neptune takes 165 years to complete one orbit around the Sun, so each season is extremely long. Despite receiving very little sunlight, the planet also generates internal heat that influences its storms. There is a real sport called bonsai skydiving, which consists of throwing a parachute out of a plane and jumping after it. This extreme activity requires great precision and training, as the skydiver must reach and put on the equipment in mid-freefall before opening it. It is practiced only by experts and with strict safety measures, as any mistake can be extremely dangerous. The Catholic Church had $97 billion in revenue in 2013, twice that of the Coca-Cola Company. Much of that money comes from donations from the faithful, educational institutions, hospitals, investments, and properties managed by dioceses and religious orders. It is estimated that the church is one of the largest landowners in the world, with thousands of schools, universities, and healthcare centers. The largest employer in the world is the United States Department of Defense, which employs more than 3 million people. This figure includes both military and civilian personnel, reflecting the enormous scale of its operations globally, as well as the logistical complexity required to sustain its functions across multiple countries. Trying to swim the channel between France and England has been illegal for more than 19 years, in case you ever wanted to try it. Although crossing it by swimming is a famous challenge, authorities strictly regulate these attempts for safety reasons, due to heavy maritime traffic, strong currents, and low water temperatures. The longest Facebook comment thread in the world belongs to Duar Kazi, who, with the help of his friends, commented a total of 584,444 times on a single post. This achievement was organized as a coordinated effort among several people over a long period, showing how interaction on social media can scale to surprisingly high numbers. In ancient Greece, the word idiot meant any individual who was not a politician, and I think that today it means the opposite. The Greek term idiotes was used to refer to someone who dealt only with private matters and did not participate in the public or political life of the city, which in that society was seen as a lack of civic responsibility. If the population of China walked past you in single file, the line would never end due to its large population. In reality, although it would be extremely long and last a very long time, it would eventually end. This example is used to illustrate the country's enormous population in a more visual way. In the 17th century, the salary of the governor of Barbados was paid in sugar. At that time, sugar was one of the most valuable products in international trade, especially in the Caribbean, where plantations generated enormous income for colonial powers. This system reflected how agricultural products could function as currency in export-based economies. Coca leaves are still used by Coca-Cola to this day. The Stepan Company in New Jersey extracts the cocaine from the leaves and delivers the processed leaves to Coca-Cola to be used in its beverages. These leaves are previously decocainized and are used only as a flavoring, maintaining the formula without psychoactive effects and under strict legal regulations in the United States. The sound of the clapperboard when directors shout "action" is used to synchronize the audio track with the video. The clap produces a clear spike in the sound recording and at the same time a visible moment in the image. This allows editors to precisely align both tracks during film editing. A day on the planet Mercury lasts approximately the same as 59 days on Earth. This corresponds to its rotation on its axis, but its solar day, meaning from sunrise to sunrise, is even longer due to its orbit around the Sun, creating extreme temperature cycles. In 1251, the King of Norway gave Henry III a polar bear. He kept it at the royal palace with a long chain so it could swim in the River Thames. This animal was kept at the Tower of London, where there was a collection of exotic animals that functioned as a kind of medieval zoo. The First Lady of the United States is actually a role, not just an honorary title, and it can be held by the president's niece, daughter, or sister, not only by his wife. Throughout history, in cases where the president was not married or his wife could not assume the role, other close women have carried out the ceremonial and social functions associated with the position. There is a rare health condition that causes a person to become intoxicated from any type of food. It is known as auto-brewery syndrome. In these individuals, certain fungi in the gut convert sugars from food into alcohol, which can cause symptoms of intoxication without having consumed alcohol. The Walking Dead was for several years one of the most profitable scripted television series. At its peak, the production cost per episode was around $2 to $3 million, while revenue from advertising, licensing, and distribution could far exceed that amount, generating millions in profit per episode. 1 in 10 European babies is conceived in an IKEA bed, a Swedish furniture company. This figure comes from advertising estimates rather than rigorous scientific studies, but it reflects the brand's enormous presence in European households. The company itself has used this type of figure as part of its marketing, highlighting how its products are part of important everyday moments in the lives of millions of people. A tablespoon of average cake frosting has less fat, calories, and sugar than a tablespoon of Nutella. This is because Nutella contains a concentrated mix of sugar, oils, and hazelnuts, making it more energy-dense compared to many common frostings. The Lapp, or Sami people of northern Finland use a unit of measurement called poronkusema, which is the distance a moose can walk before it feels the need to urinate. I live 50 poronkusemas from your house. In reality, it refers to the distance a reindeer can travel without stopping, approximately about 4.3 miles. It was useful for estimating routes on long journeys through snowy areas where there were no precise maps. The longest prison sentence ever given was 384,912 years for a 22-year-old mailman named Gabriel Granados for not delivering more than 72,000 letters. These types of cumulative sentences are usually symbolic, as they far exceed a human lifespan and reflect the severity of multiple crimes committed. Every second, more than 100 billion neutrinos pass through your head without you noticing. These particles barely interact with matter, so they pass through the entire planet without difficulty. They come mainly from the sun and other cosmic phenomena, and detecting them requires extremely sensitive instruments. Some detectors are buried underground or in ice to isolate interference, and even then they only register a tiny fraction of those passing through the Earth. Clinomania is the excessive desire to stay in bed all day. Although it is not always a formal clinical term, it can be associated with extreme fatigue, stress, or emotional states that make a person avoid daily activities. In some cases, it may also be related to sleep disorders or mental health issues. So if it is persistent, seeking professional guidance is usually recommended. Anophthalmus hitleri is a blind beetle found only in 5 caves in Slovenia. It was named in honor of Hitler in 1933. It is currently endangered due to collectors of World War II memorabilia. The largest cemetery in the world is the Wadi al-Salam Cemetery, located in the Shiite holy city of Najaf, Iraq. It has approximately 2.3 square miles in size and contains so many bodies that the exact number is unknown, but it is estimated in the millions, with 500,000 added each year. If the 5 trillion spiders that exist in the Netherlands suddenly changed their diet and wanted to eat humans instead of other insects, they would eat all 16.7 million Dutch people in just 3 days. This type of estimate is based on the total amount of food spiders consume and serves more as a theoretical curiosity than a real possibility. This is a painting within a painting, being painted by the painter who is painting the painting, who is also painting himself. I will let you think about that. This type of composition is an artistic technique that plays with perception and self-reference. It is known as mise en abîme and has been used by artists to create complex visual effects and reflect on the nature of art and reality. Lemons and oranges smell different because they have identical molecules that are mirror images of each other. An orange is like a left-handed lemon. This phenomenon is called chirality and causes 2 molecules with the same composition to have different aromas depending on their spatial orientation, something very important in the chemistry of smells. The smallest park in the world is located in downtown Portland, Oregon, in the United States, and measures only 2 feet in diameter. It is called Mill Ends Park and was created as a journalistic joke, but over time it became an officially recognized site. In Japan, only 2% of adoptions are of children. 98% are of adult men between 25 and 30 years old. These adoptions usually occur in family businesses, where an adult, often an employee or son-in-law, is adopted to ensure the continuity of the business and the family name. Contrary to popular belief, washing your hands with warm water does not kill bacteria better than washing them with cold water. This is because the water would need to be boiling to kill bacteria. The most important factor is the use of soap and friction when washing properly. Scrubbing your hands for at least 20 seconds helps remove dirt and microorganisms, which are then rinsed away by the water. Pigeons can differentiate between Impressionist paintings by Monet and Cubist paintings by Picasso. They can even tell if Monet's paintings are hung upside down. How does it feel that a pigeon is smarter than you? Experiments have shown that they can learn to recognize artistic styles through visual training, revealing that their pattern processing ability is more advanced than commonly thought. Metal snow falls on the planet Venus. In the high regions of the planet, metallic compounds have been detected that condense and fall like a kind of snow due to the high temperatures and extreme pressure, creating a unique phenomenon in the solar system. It is believed that these compounds include lead and bismuth sulfides, which evaporate in the hottest regions and then settle on the mountains, covering them with a shiny layer. There are so many restaurants in New York City that you could eat at a different place every day for 12 years and never visit the same place twice. This reflects the city's enormous culinary diversity, where cuisines from all over the world coexist, from small family-run spots to internationally recognized fine dining restaurants. Cyclists in the Tour de France have to eat the equivalent of 27 cheeseburgers each day. During the most demanding stages, they can burn between 6,000 and 8,000 calories daily, so they need to consume large amounts of food, rich in carbohydrates, proteins, and fats to maintain their performance during the competition. The United Nations has declared access to the internet a human right. More specifically, it has stated that access to online information is key to exercising other fundamental rights, promoting its availability, and preventing unjustified restrictions in different parts of the world. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went in there in the first place? Well, there's a scientific term for that called the doorway effect. This phenomenon occurs because the brain segments information based on changes in environment, which can interrupt the immediate recall of an intention. There are no cubes in cubism. Cézanne's theory was that everything can be divided into cylinders, spheres, and cones. Cubism, later developed by artists such as Picasso and Braque, took that idea further by fragmenting forms and showing multiple perspectives at the same time in a single image. This approach broke with traditional representation and changed the way space was understood in art. There is a Starbucks cup visible in almost every scene of the movie Fight Club. In reality, this detail is an intentional nod by the director, who included coffee cups as a recurring element in the background of many scenes, although they are not always easy to notice. The English word orange was the name of the fruit for several hundred years before the color was named after the fruit. Before that, what we now know as the color orange was called yellow-red. This change happened gradually as the fruit became more common in Europe, influencing the language and replacing earlier descriptions with a more specific term. In 1894, the Times estimated that by 1950, London would be covered by 9 feet of horse manure. At that time, the city depended on horse-drawn transport, and waste was a serious problem. The prediction did not come true thanks to the arrival of automobiles, which completely changed the urban transportation system. Iceland has no army and has been recognized as the most peaceful country in the world for more than 15 consecutive years, according to the Global Peace Index. In recent comparisons, countries such as New Zealand, Ireland, Denmark, and Austria also tend to rank among the top positions. Iceland relies on civilian security forces and defense agreements with allies, allowing it to maintain security without a standing army. Pollution emissions from automobiles are responsible for more deaths each year than traffic accidents. Air pollution is associated with respiratory and cardiovascular diseases that affect millions of people around the world, making it a large-scale public health problem. Even prolonged exposure to low levels can increase the risk of heart attacks, strokes, and chronic lung problems. Crows are capable of recognizing human faces and even holding grudges against those they do not like. Studies have shown that they can remember faces for years and communicate that recognition to other crows, showing a surprising level of social intelligence. Each year, Peruvians eat more than 60 million guinea pigs, also called cavies. In Switzerland, it is illegal to have only one guinea pig. In Peru, they are part of traditional cuisine since pre-Hispanic times, while in Switzerland, these animals are considered social and must live with companions to ensure their well-being. The human hearing range is about 20 to 20,000 hertz. If it were lower than 20, we would be able to hear the movement of our own muscles. We could also perceive internal body vibrations, which would likely be uncomfortable or even disturbing. In 1891, the painter Claude Monet, one of the creators of Impressionism, won 100,000 francs in the French lottery, but he did not win an Olympic medal. That money allowed him to stabilize his financial situation and continue developing his work with greater freedom, especially his famous series of landscapes and gardens. The Goblet of Fire is much longer than the first 3 books in the Harry Potter series because the author, J.K. Rowling, accidentally created a massive plot hole that she spent the rest of the book trying to fix. Although this is a popular explanation, in reality, the increase in length also reflects a more complex plot and the growth of the story. The Roman name for Paris was Lutetia, which means mud place. The full name was Lutetia Pediciorum and referred to the wet and muddy terrain near the Seine River where the city was established. Over time, the name evolved into Paris. This change occurred when adopting the name of the Parisii, the Celtic tribe that inhabited the region before the Roman conquest. Actor Ken Jeong originally wanted to be a doctor, but his wife told him to pursue his dream of becoming a comedian after she was diagnosed with cancer. So he did. In fact, he graduated in medicine and practiced as a physician before fully dedicating himself to acting, achieving recognition in comedy while his wife overcame the illness. From 1912 to 1948, painting was an Olympic competition that awarded medals. I think the Olympics were very different before. During those years, disciplines such as sculpture, architecture, music, and literature were also awarded, as long as the works were related to sports. These competitions disappeared when it was decided that the games should focus only on athletes. Prairie dogs greet each other with kisses. In reality, this gesture consists of touching their front teeth, which allows them to recognize each other and confirm that they belong to the same group. This social behavior strengthens their bonds and helps maintain order within their colonies. They also use a variety of complex vocalizations to alert about predators and coordinate group activity. 98% of floors in Great Britain are carpeted. In Italy, it is only 2%. This difference is partly due to climate, since in the United Kingdom, carpets help retain heat, while in Italy, hard floors such as marble or ceramic are more common because they stay cooler. Located in Brussels, Nemo 33 was for years the deepest indoor pool in the world, with a depth of 108 feet. It was mainly used for professional diving training and filming, thanks to its platforms at different depths and its highly filtered and clear water. The smallest cat in the world was a Himalayan Persian cat named Tinkertoy that measured only 2.8 inches tall and 7.5 inches long. At that size, it was 6 years old and already an adult. Its tiny size was due to a genetic condition, and despite this, it lived a normal life, becoming a very unusual case within its species. A typical microwave oven consumes more electricity keeping its digital clock running than it uses heating food. This can happen in some models if they are used only a few times a day, since the constant consumption of the clock adds up. However, with frequent use, the energy used to heat food is usually much greater. The flag of the Philippines is flown with the red stripe on top in times of war and with the blue stripe on top in times of peace. This detail makes it unique among national flags, as it can be officially inverted to communicate the country's state without changing its design. Liechtenstein, the sixth smallest country in the world, is the largest exporter of false teeth. In the 19th century and early 20th century, having all your teeth removed and replaced with new artificial ones was a common gift when you turned 21. This was because dental treatments were limited and painful, so many people preferred to replace their entire set of teeth with more durable and aesthetically uniform prosthetics. There are tiny eight-legged arachnids closely related to spiders living in the pores of your face, called demodex, which crawl across your face in the dark to mate. These microorganisms are common in humans and, in most cases, do not cause problems, as they feed on dead skin cells and natural oils, forming part of the skin's ecosystem. Sweet corn, which is a variety of corn with a high sugar content, makes a squeaking sound like rubbing two balloons when it grows. This sound is produced by the rapid expansion of stalk, generating small vibrations that can be perceived in very quiet conditions. Although it is very faint for the human ear, sensitive instruments can detect it more clearly, revealing that plant growth is an active and dynamic process. License plates in the Northwest Territories of Canada are shaped like polar bears. This distinctive design was adopted as a regional symbol and has become very popular among collectors, highlighting the characteristic wildlife of the Canadian Arctic. They were introduced in the 1970s and are made using a special mold, which makes them unique among vehicle plates worldwide. Fidel Castro calculated that he saved 10 days of work each year by not shaving. He himself mentioned that spending several minutes each day shaving added up to many hours over time. His characteristic beard not only became a political symbol, but also a practical decision that, according to him, allowed him to use his time better and project a distinctive image. Biologists cannot agree on a definition for the words species, organism, or life. Psychologists cannot agree on a definition of personality. Anthropologists cannot agree on a definition for the word culture, or the definition of the word definition. The four ghosts in the game Pac-Man are programmed to behave differently. Blinky, the red ghost, chases you. Pinky, the pink ghost, tries to position itself in front of Pac-Man. Inky, the blue ghost, attempts to position itself in a similar way, and Clyde, the orange ghost, moves randomly. Moon dust smells like gunpowder. Astronauts from the Apollo program described that, after returning to the lunar module, the dust they carried on their suits gave off a smell similar to burned gunpowder. This is due to chemical reactions when the dust, which is highly reactive, comes into contact with air. All humans have the ability to see ultraviolet light, but it is passively filtered by our lens. People who undergo surgery to remove the lens can see ultraviolet light. In these cases, some people perceive additional bluish or violet tones, which slightly changes the way they see certain colors. The 10,000 trillions of ants that exist in the world weigh roughly the same as all 7 billion humans. Although it is difficult to calculate precisely, the total biomass of ants is comparable to that of humans, demonstrating their enormous presence in almost all ecosystems on the planet. There is a company called True that makes non-reversing mirrors that show you how you actually look to other people. Unlike regular mirrors, these use a special design that avoids lateral inversion, offering an image closer to how others perceive you. You are 14% more likely to die on your birthday than on any other day. Some studies suggest that this may be due to risk behaviors such as celebrations, alcohol consumption, or travel. It has also been proposed that psychological and stress-related factors may influence this slight increase. The famous torrent website, The Pirate Bay, once tried to buy an island with the hope of turning it into its own country without copyright laws. The idea emerged as a symbolic proposal to evade regulations, although it was never carried out and remained more as a curiosity within internet culture. This 1953 painting by abstract expressionist Barnett Newman sold at auction for the astonishing sum of $43,800,000. To me, it just looks like blue paint, but whatever. The largest pearl in the world weighs 13.9 pounds. It was found in the Philippines and is known as the Pearl of Puerto Princesa. Its size is so unusual that for years it was not recognized as one of the largest until it was officially evaluated. It formed inside a giant clam and can take decades to develop, which explains why pieces of that size are extremely rare in nature. The popular Canadian beer Molson Canadian distributed beer fridges across Europe that only open for Canadians by simply scanning their passports. In fact, those same fridges were made available at the Winter Olympics in Sochi that year. Unfortunately, so far it has not been possible to carry out a scientific experiment that proves that time exists. In science, time is treated as a fundamental dimension that can be measured and modeled with great precision, for example, in the theory of relativity. However, what is actually measured are changes and processes, which has led to philosophical debates about whether time is a physical entity or a way of describing those changes. Pollution in Beijing, China can be so severe that spending one day breathing the air there can be equivalent to smoking 21 cigarettes. This comparison is used to illustrate the extreme levels of particulate pollution on certain days, especially during intense smog episodes. The English football team Darlington FC acquired 50,000 worms to drain their flooded field, but they all drowned. Worms are often used to improve soil quality because they help aerate it, but in conditions of excess water, they cannot survive due to lack of oxygen. In the state of Nevada, public intoxication is not only explicitly legal, but it is illegal for any city or town to pass a law that makes it illegal. This rule aims to treat alcoholism more as a health issue than a crime, avoiding penalties for simply being intoxicated. 1 in 50 Americans say they have been abducted by extraterrestrials. This figure comes from surveys where some people interpret experiences such as sleep paralysis, vivid dreams, or confused memories as real encounters. Scientists usually attribute these reports to psychological or neurological phenomena rather than evidence of extraterrestrial visits. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, Walt Disney, and Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of school. In reality, some left higher education, not basic education. Even so, they all continued learning on their own and developed skills that led them to stand out, demonstrating that education can also happen outside a traditional classroom. Most diamonds are 3 billion years old. There are enough diamonds for each of us to have a full cup. A burning candle creates 1.5 million microdiamonds per second. These form under specific conditions of pressure and temperature, and although those produced by a candle are microscopic, they show how carbon can transform into different structures. 98% of the trillions upon trillions upon trillions of atoms in the human body are replaced each year. The body is in constant renewal at the molecular level, especially in cells such as those of the skin and blood. However, some structures, such as parts of the brain, can retain certain components for much longer, which means that not the entire body renews at the same rate. Reed Hastings was inspired to found Netflix after accumulating $40 in late fees on a VHS copy of Apollo 13. This experience led him to imagine a model without penalties for late returns, which eventually gave rise to a subscription-based rental system that transformed the entertainment industry. When the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre Museum in 1911, one of the suspects was Picasso. The painting was missing for more than 2 years until it was recovered in Italy, which greatly increased its fame worldwide. A company called Neuroware sells what they call Miko headphones that read your brain waves and select music based on your mood. They use sensors that detect electrical activity in the brain to interpret levels of concentration or relaxation, adjusting the music in real time to influence how you feel. The rock band Aerosmith has earned more money from Guitar Hero than from all of their albums. Their participation in the video game Guitar Hero Aerosmith in 2008 generated huge revenue through game sales and licensing, showing how the music industry can also benefit from other media, such as video games. Chinese soldiers place needles in the collars of their shirts to maintain ideal posture during military parades. This practice is used during training to force them to keep their heads straight and backs upright, since any incorrect movement causes slight discomfort that helps correct posture. In 2008, a man in Ohio was arrested after engaging in very strange behavior with a picnic table in a public park. The incident drew attention from the police and local media due to how unusual the case was, becoming one of those curious stories that circulate widely on the internet. In the town of Churchill, in Manitoba, Canada, it is illegal to lock your car in case someone needs to escape from one of the 950 polar bears in the area. This unusual rule is related to the high presence of these animals in the region, where authorities prioritize people's safety in unexpected encounters with bears in urban areas. On average, most people have fewer friends than their friends have. That is, your friends have more friends than you. This is known as the friendship paradox, or forever alone. This effect occurs because people with more social connections are more likely to appear within the friendship networks of others, which distorts perception and makes it seem like everyone else has more friends. The smallest poisonous frog in the world measures only 0.4 inches in length and secretes a toxic poison through its skin as a defense mechanism. Despite its tiny size, its bright color warns predators of its toxicity, a phenomenon known as warning coloration. This type of visual signal helps prevent unnecessary attacks, as many animals quickly learn to associate those intense colors with danger and bad taste. The human heart pumps enough blood over a lifetime to fill an oil tanker. Over decades, the heart beats billions of times, pushing millions of liters of blood, demonstrating the incredible endurance and efficiency of this vital organ. On average, it beats more than 100,000 times a day, and carries oxygen and nutrients to every cell in the body without stopping for a single moment. The word font only refers to things like size, bold, and italics. The actual style of the letters is called a typeface. Although they are often confused in everyday use, in typography there is a technical difference between the two terms. The Incas measured time based on how long it took to cook a potato. In the absence of mechanical clocks, many cultures used everyday processes as time references. In the Andean case, cooking foods like potatoes served as a practical way to measure intervals, especially in domestic or ritual activities. In the United Arab Emirates, Masdar City was developed as an ambitious urban project designed to be highly sustainable. The city was conceived to run on solar energy and other renewable sources, minimizing carbon emissions and waste as much as possible. More than 50% of NASA employees are dyslexic. They are hired for their superior problem-solving ability. Although dyslexia can be associated with certain cognitive strengths, there is no evidence that most NASA employees have this condition. But it is true that the organization values diverse ways of thinking. Using paper towels to dry your hands after washing them reduces bacterial count by 45 to 60%. However, using a hot air dryer actually increases bacterial count by an average of 255%, since bacteria grow rapidly in a warm and humid environment. The sport and the name baseball were invented in England in the 1750s. There are old records of games called baseball in England that shared characteristics with modern baseball. Over time, the sport evolved in the United States during the 19th century until adopting the rules known today. There, standards such as the diamond, the bases, and the number of players were established, consolidating it as the modern sport. The artificial sweetener Splenda, also known as sucralose, was discovered when a researcher misheard the instruction to test this chemical in an experiment and understood that he should taste it. This mistake occurred during research in the 1970s, and the result was an extremely sweet compound that provides no calories since the human body barely metabolizes it. There are more living organisms in a spoonful of soil than there are people on the entire planet. Charles Darwin calculated that English soil contains 50,000 worms per acre. The soil is full of bacteria, fungi, and small invertebrates that form complex ecosystems essential for fertility and nutrient cycling. Norway allowed international students to study for free at its public universities for many years. However, this recently changed. Since 2023, students from outside the European Union and the European Economic Area must pay tuition at most public universities. If a regular sheet of paper approximately 0.004 inches thick could be folded 51 times, its thickness would exceed the average distance between the Earth and the Sun. This happens because each fold doubles the previous thickness, making the growth exponential. In theory, after 51 folds, it would reach more than 139 million miles, above the average distance between the Earth and the Sun, which is about 93 million miles. The app Candy Crush Saga has been one of the most profitable in the world. At one point, it generated close to $1 million a day, but over time, its revenue grew even more. Today, the game continues to generate millions daily thanks to in-app purchases and its massive global player base. Cuku kaki kakeku kaya kuku kaki kakaku is a tongue twister from Indonesia that means, "My grandfather's toenails look like my sister's." This type of phrase plays with very similar sounds to test pronunciation, something common in many languages to train diction and verbal memory. The reason Lego figures have holes on the top of their heads is to allow air to pass through in case one gets stuck in a child's throat. This design is part of safety measures developed by the company to reduce choking risks in case of an accident. The steepest street in the world is Baldwin Street, located in Dunedin, New Zealand. At its steepest point, it reaches an incline of approximately 35 degrees. The street measures a little over 984 feet in length and is a tourist attraction known for unusual events, such as races in which thousands of candies are released rolling downhill. Before Jackie Chan was born, his parents had unusual lives in a complicated historical context. His father worked as a government security agent, and his mother was involved in illegal activities related to the opium trade. It was in that environment that they met, before starting a new life together. The water in the mouth of a blue whale weighs the same as its entire body. When feeding, it can engulf enormous amounts of water along with krill, expanding its throat in an impressive way. It then expels the water through its baleen, keeping only the food. In each gulp, it can filter millions of small crustaceans, and its tongue alone can weigh as much as an adult elephant, demonstrating the enormous scale of this animal. Ben & Jerry's has a real cemetery where they bury all their discontinued ice cream flavors. Each grave includes a humorous description of the flavor, turning it into a curious way of honoring products that are no longer sold. This cemetery is located in Vermont and has become popular among fans who visit the site. In 2006, an American Airlines flight made an emergency stop after a flight attendant lit matches to hide the smell of a flatulence. Passengers reported a sulfur smell and smoke in the cabin, which led the crew to take precautions and divert the plane. It was later determined that there was no real danger. In advertisements, the time shown on a clock almost always reads 10:10. This position creates a visual shape similar to a smile, which is more pleasing to the viewer and allows the brand logo on the dial to be clearly displayed. In addition, the hands in that position frame the center of the clock symmetrically, directing attention to the design without covering important details. The last veteran of World War I, Florence Green, died in February 2012. Before this, she was asked what it felt like to be 110 years old. She answered that it was not very different from being 109. She served in the British Royal Air Force, and her death marked the end of a generation directly linked to that historical conflict. Before the 17th century, carrots were actually purple. They did not become orange until a mutation occurred. European farmers began selecting this variant for its color and flavor, and over time it became the most common, although purple, yellow, and white varieties still exist. The former Prime Minister of Australia, Bob Hawke, held the world record for drinking a yard of beer in the shortest time. He drank that very large glass in only 11 seconds. He achieved the record while studying at the University of Oxford, long before entering politics. Years later, he would mention the anecdote with humor, and it became one of the most famous curiosities of his biography. A giraffe can go longer without water than a camel. This is because it gets much of the liquid it needs from the leaves it eats. In addition, its body is adapted to conserve water efficiently in dry environments, as it produces very concentrated urine and loses very little water through sweat, allowing it to survive long periods without drinking directly. 20% of the top 20 snooker players, a type of billiards, were colorblind. This fact is striking because the game depends heavily on distinguishing colors, suggesting that these players develop additional strategies or skills to compensate for that condition. Many rely more on positioning, memory, and contrast between the balls, showing that perception does not depend only on color but also on experience and adaptation. Pluto is actually smaller than Russia. Its diameter is smaller than the width of Russian territory, highlighting how tiny this dwarf planet is within the solar system, despite having been considered a planet for many years. Its diameter is approximately 1,470 miles, while Russia stretches more than 5,500 miles from east to west. The age record for a cat is 38 years. A cat from Austin, Texas that lived from 1967 to 2005. His name was Krempuff, and his longevity was recognized by Guinness World Records. His owner claimed that part of his diet included dry food, broccoli, eggs, turkey bacon, and even a little coffee with cream. A chameleon can move its eyes in two directions at the same time. Each eye functions independently, allowing it to observe its surroundings almost 360 degrees without moving its head. When it detects prey, both eyes focus forward with great precision before it launches its tongue. In ancient Greece, they did not have a word for religion. Instead, spiritual life was integrated into daily life, politics, and culture without a clear separation between the religious and the civil as occurs in many modern societies. Rituals, festivals, and offerings were part of public life and were closely tied to the identity of each city. Frederick Bauer, the creator of Pringles, had his ashes stored in a Pringles can after he died. His family fulfilled this wish as a symbolic gesture, choosing an original flavor can to honor his most recognized invention. Plato believed that the smallest particles of matter were tiny right triangles. In his work, Timaeus, he imagined that the elements of the universe were made of combinations of triangles that formed perfect geometric solids. For example, fire was associated with the tetrahedron and air with the octahedron. It was a philosophical explanation of the world long before the modern theory of atoms. On land, a mole can dig a tunnel 300 feet long in just one night. This is possible thanks to its extremely strong front limbs adapted for digging. In addition, its fast metabolism allows it to work almost without rest while searching for food underground. Until 1913, in some countries, it was legal to send small children through the mail. In the United States, for example, the Postal Service allowed people to be sent as long as they met the weight limit, which led to curious cases where children were sent with stamps attached to their clothing, usually accompanied by mail carriers. Doctors' poor handwriting kills more than 7,000 people and injures more than 1,500,000 people annually due to the administration of incorrect medications. This problem has led to the implementation of electronic prescriptions and digital systems in many countries, reducing errors and improving patient safety in medical settings. In 2010, the sale of secondhand underwear was banned in Ghana. The measure was part of an attempt by the government to protect the local textile industry, which was being affected by the enormous amount of used clothing imported from Europe and North America. In many African markets, this type of clothing is sold in large bundles known as Obroni clothes. Humans are born with 350 bones in their bodies, but when a person reaches adulthood, we only have 206. This is because our bones fuse as the body grows and develops. This process occurs mainly during childhood and adolescence, especially in the skull, spine, and limbs, allowing greater strength, stability, and the ability to support the weight and movement of the adult body. In 2010, the BBC in England spent nearly £230,000 on tea, but only £2,000 on biscuits. Tea consumption is a deeply rooted tradition in the United Kingdom, especially in work environments. This expense reflects the scale of an organization with thousands of employees and the cultural importance of this drink in daily British life. Due to extreme pressure and weather conditions, it literally rains diamonds on Neptune and Uranus. Scientists believe that carbon in their atmospheres is compressed under enormous pressure, forming diamonds that then fall toward the interior of the planet. Checking exams was invented at the University of Cambridge in 1792. A chemistry professor named William Farish was the first to do it. He introduced a system to evaluate many students quickly using marks and numerical scores, something that seems normal today, but at that time was an important innovation in higher education. All elephants walk on their toes. This is because the back part of their foot is made entirely of fat and has no bone. This pad works as a natural shock absorber that distributes their enormous weight, reduces impact when walking, and allows them to move with surprising silence despite their size. The first advertising songs were written in newspapers. Readers had to sing them. These pieces used familiar melodies so that people could remember them easily, since radio and television did not yet exist. Over time, they evolved into modern jingles, designed specifically to stay in memory and quickly associate with a brand. Dolphins do not drink seawater like humans, since it would make them sick or possibly kill them. Instead, they get all their fluids from the food they eat. Their kidneys are highly adapted to conserve water and eliminate excess salt, allowing them to stay hydrated without needing to drink directly from the ocean. The word pizza comes from the old German word bizo, which means bite and piece of bread. The term began to appear in Italian documents around the 10th century to describe flatbreads baked with different ingredients. Over time, it became popular in Naples, where the modern version with tomato, cheese, and other ingredients was developed and later spread throughout the world. The largest yacht in the world, a Zam, measures approximately 590 feet long, which is equivalent to almost 2 football fields. In addition, it has nearly 94,000 horsepower, allowing it to reach unusually high speeds for a vessel of its size. For a time, British spies experimented with different liquids as invisible ink to write secret messages. One of the methods they tested worked chemically, but had a practical drawback. Over time, it produced a very unpleasant smell, so it was eventually discarded in favor of more discreet and effective techniques. In Japan, there are large hornets whose venom is very potent and can cause intense pain and serious reactions in some people. One of the most well-known species can measure several inches and has a stinger capable of piercing light clothing, in addition to releasing pheromones that attract others, increasing the danger in multiple attacks. Platypuses do not have nipples. They secrete milk through their pores. The milk is released through glands in the skin of the abdomen and collects in small grooves in the fur, where the young lap it up to feed. This curious system exists because the platypus is a monotreme, a very ancient type of mammal that also lays eggs instead of giving birth to live young. Buttermilk does not contain butter. In fact, it is quite low in fat and is really good for digestion. Traditionally, it is the liquid left after churning butter, and today it is also produced in a fermented form, providing beneficial bacteria that support gut health. It is also rich in proteins and minerals and has been used for centuries in different cultures, both as a nutritious drink and in the preparation of breads and other foods. The technology behind smartphones depends on more than 250,000 different patents. These cover everything from touchscreens and batteries to wireless communications and software. That is why technology companies are often involved in complex negotiations and legal disputes in order to use certain technologies in their devices. Every year, the Netherlands sends 20,000 tulip bulbs to Canada to thank them for their help during World War II. This gesture has been maintained as a tradition since the liberation of the country and symbolizes the close historical relationship between the two nations. Jimmy Carter once sent a jacket to the dry cleaner with nuclear launch codes in the pocket. Presidents of the United States always carry a card with authentication codes known as the biscuit to confirm their identity in case of ordering a nuclear strike. Carter realized the mistake after the garment had already been sent. Methane gases produced by cows create as much pollution as automobiles. This gas is a powerful contributor to the greenhouse effect and is released during digestion. For this reason, livestock farming is considered an important source of emissions globally. On average, in every 0.77 square miles of ocean across the planet, there are 46,000 pieces of trash. Much of this waste is plastic, which can take decades or centuries to degrade, affecting marine life and entering the food chain. Many of these pieces break down into nearly invisible microplastics that have already been found in fish, birds, and even in the sea salt we consume daily. Contrary to popular belief, cracking your knuckles does not damage bones or cause arthritis. The sound you hear is simply the popping of gas bubbles. However, if done excessively, it can cause damage to tissues. Some studies have found that doing it frequently may cause slight inflammation or reduce grip strength over time, although without serious effects on joint health. There are 780 languages spoken in India. 250 have died in the last 50 years. The country's enormous linguistic diversity is due to its size, its history, and the existence of many isolated communities. However, many minority languages are disappearing because younger generations adopt more dominant languages such as Hindi or English. Every minute, more than 500 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube. This enormous amount of content is equivalent to more than 20 days of new video every hour, reflecting the scale of the platform and the number of users who constantly create content. If you made a straight tunnel through the Earth and dropped yourself into it, it would take exactly 42 minutes and 12 seconds to reach the other side of the world. This calculation assumes a planet with uniform density and no air resistance. In practice, it would be impossible due to extreme heat and pressure, but it serves as an interesting physics exercise about gravity. There is a mattress called the Cuddle Mattress that is specifically designed to give you a place to put your arm while sleeping, spooning, or hugging. Its design includes a space or channel that prevents uncomfortable pressure, improving sleep quality in that position. Humans have the ability to see ultraviolet or UV light, but it is filtered by the lens of the eye. People who undergo surgery to remove it, mainly due to cataracts, can see ultraviolet light. Some patients describe this phenomenon as a bluish or violet tone in certain objects, since the human retina can detect part of that spectrum. The Mangalica pig, also known as the curly-haired pig, is a rare breed of pig that looks like a sheep. Native to Central Europe, it has a thick coat that allows it to withstand cold climates. In addition, it is valued for the quality of its meat, considered more flavorful and with a higher fat content. It is estimated that more than 90% of all photographs ever taken in history have been captured in the digital era, especially since the rise of smartphones. Each year, more than 1 trillion photographs are taken worldwide. In the early years of photography, during the 19th century and early 20th century, family portraits were the most common use of cameras, and photographs of babies and children were especially popular because families wanted to preserve memories of their children. The Lord of the Rings is not a trilogy. In fact, it is a single work that was divided and published in 3 volumes between 1954 and 1955 for economic reasons. Its author conceived it as a continuous story, but its length and printing costs led to it being split, which ended up defining the way it is known today by most readers. Potatoes were illegal in France between 1748 and 1772. At that time, they were believed to cause diseases such as leprosy, so their cultivation was restricted. Years later, the agronomist Antoine Parmentier helped popularize them by proving that they were safe and nutritious, even organizing campaigns to encourage people to accept them. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research concluded that firstborn children have a higher intelligence quotient than their younger siblings. It is believed that this may be due to factors such as receiving more attention in early years or taking on roles of responsibility, although the differences are usually small and do not determine future success. For 100 years, the flag of the Turks and Caicos Islands, a British overseas territory, mistakenly featured a drawing of igloos on a beach. In reality, the design represented piles of salt, which was one of the island's main industries. The error was due to a misinterpretation of the original drawing. It was not until the late 20th century that the design was adjusted so the shapes more clearly resembled piles of salt rather than ice structures. There is a 49-year-old man named Dalton Getty who has been creating artwork on pencil tips for 25 years. His sculptures are so small and detailed that they require special tools and great precision, sometimes taking months to complete a single piece. The Boeing airplane factory in Washington is so large that when it was being built, clouds formed near the ceiling. The Everett plant is one of the largest buildings in the world by volume, and has its own ventilation system to control humidity and prevent that phenomenon. There are even streets, signage, and transportation for workers inside the building. Passing gas helps reduce blood pressure and is good for overall health. This is related to the release of pressure in the digestive system, which can relieve abdominal discomfort. In addition, it is a normal sign that the digestive process is functioning correctly. 1 in 3 Russians believes that the sun revolves around the Earth, and 46% of adults in the United States believe that the world is less than 10,000 years old. These figures come from surveys and reflect differences in scientific education and cultural beliefs, rather than conclusions based on scientific evidence. They also show how public perception can diverge from scientific consensus, even on widely studied and proven topics. In the 1990s, the United States Air Force explored experimental ideas for non-lethal weapons based on chemical compounds that would alter human behavior. These contained very strong pheromones that could make enemy forces feel attracted to each other. Before Sylvester Stallone sold the script for Rocky, he was broke and was forced to sell his dog for $50. 1 week later, he sold the script and got his dog back for the astonishing sum of $3,000. Leonardo da Vinci worked on the Mona Lisa for 15 years. When he died in 1519, he still did not consider it finished. Humans collectively spend 500,000 hours per day typing internet passwords. With the number of accounts the average person manages, including emails, social media, and services, the accumulated time becomes enormous. That is why password managers and biometric systems have emerged to reduce the need to constantly type them. The baobab is a genus of tree found in Madagascar, whose trunk can store up to 31,700 gallons of water. This ability allows it to survive long periods of drought, acting as a natural reservoir that makes it a symbol of resilience in arid regions. In addition, its trunk is spongy and fibrous, which facilitates water storage and allows it to withstand extreme conditions for many years. Some local pagans became upset because a giant drawing of Homer Simpson appeared next to the Cerne Abbas giant in Dorset, United Kingdom, as advertising for the Simpsons movie. Producer Al Jean said that this was the last religion we had left to upset. Now we have them all, we. The Cerne Abbas giant is an ancient figure carved into the side of a hill and is associated with historical and cultural symbolism, so any modern intervention usually generates controversy. There is a natural gas vent in Iraq known as the Eternal Fire that has been burning for more than 4,000 years and has been mentioned by the ancient Greek author Herodotus and in the Book of Daniel of the Old Testament. This type of continuous fire occurs when natural gas seeps from underground and remains constantly ignited. Studies have shown that people with creative minds have more difficulty falling asleep at night and prefer to stay up late. This may be related to higher mental activity, as they tend to generate ideas constantly, even during moments of rest. Octopuses have 3 hearts. 2 of them pump blood to the gills, and the third to the rest of the body. In addition, their blood is blue due to hemocyanin, a copper-rich protein that transports oxygen efficiently in cold, low-oxygen environments. Interestingly, the main heart stops beating when they swim, so they prefer to move by walking along the ocean floor to avoid tiring quickly. This is the so-called assassin bug. It is an insect that uses the remains of other small insects as a kind of protection or camouflage to go unnoticed in its environment. By covering itself with these remains, it manages to avoid predators and approach its prey without being detected. This behavior is typical of some assassin bug nymphs, which use sticky secretions to attach the debris and enhance their hunting strategy. Between 1983 and 2000, hundreds of commercial aviation accidents were recorded in the United States. During that period, more than 53,000 people were traveling on the aircraft involved, and more than 96% survived. This shows that, although aviation accidents receive a lot of media attention, most people on board usually survive when they occur. The oldest musical instruments in the world are a pair of flutes made from bird bone and mammoth ivory that date back 42,000 to 43,000 years. They were found in caves in Europe and show that early humans were already creating complex music, possibly for ritual or social purposes within their communities. The universe has the shape of a vuvuzela. This idea comes from some cosmological models that suggest the universe could have a slightly asymmetrical or curved shape on a large scale, although in practice, there is still no definitive scientific consensus, and most observations indicate that it is quite homogeneous. A leopon is a hybrid animal resulting from the cross between a male leopard and a lioness. These cases are extremely rare and usually occur in captivity, since in the wild, both species do not typically meet or reproduce with each other. Documented specimens show characteristics of both animals, such as spots and an intermediate build, although they do not form stable populations and are not considered a natural species. Between 1928 and 1948, 12 Olympic medals were awarded in the category of urban planning. During those decades, the Olympic Games also included artistic competitions in areas such as architecture, literature, music, painting, and sculpture. The only rule was that the works had to be inspired by sports. Ethiopia uses its own calendar based on the Coptic calendar, which has 13 months, 12 of 30 days, and 1 additional of 5 or 6 days. Currently, the country is approximately 7 or 8 years behind the Gregorian calendar, So in 2026, it corresponds to around the Ethiopian year 2018. In addition, the Ethiopian New Year is celebrated on September 11th, or the 12th in leap years according to the Gregorian calendar. There is a skyscraper in New York City with no windows. It is an extreme example of brutalist architecture and is located at number 33 Thomas Street. The building houses telecommunications infrastructure and data centers, so it does not require natural lighting. Harry Houdini could lift pins with his eyelashes and thread a needle using his feet. These tricks were part of his training to develop extreme muscle control and resistance to pain, qualities that also helped him in his famous escapes. Houdini constantly practiced unusual skills to amaze audiences and maintain his reputation as one of the most impressive illusionists of his time. In zero gravity, a candle flame is round and blue. This happens because there is no convection to make the hot air rise, so combustion spreads evenly around the wick, producing a cooler flame with less soot. In addition, oxygen reaches it more slowly and evenly, making the flame smaller and more stable compared to the elongated shape we see on Earth. There is a woman named Veronica Sider who has vision 20 times better than that of an average person. She is able to identify people at a distance of approximately 1 mile. In fact, she holds a Guinness World Record for it, demonstrating an exceptional case of visual acuity. High school students today have the same levels of anxiety as mental patients in asylums in the 1950s. This type of comparison comes from psychological studies that show a significant increase in anxiety over time, influenced by social, academic, and technological factors. Shakespeare, Sir Walter Raleigh, and King Charles I of England had pierced ears. At that time, earrings in men were a symbol of status, wealth, or travel experience, and did not have the same connotation as in later periods. In some cases, it was even believed that wearing an earring could improve eyesight or protect against disease, mixing fashion with superstition. Fire whirls, also known as fire tornadoes, are vortices of flames that occur in places with sufficient heat, such as Australia. They form when hot air rises rapidly and begins to spin, creating intense columns of fire that can move and increase the spread of wildfires. Genghis Khan had more than 500 wives and too many children. 1 in 10 people in Central Asia are his direct descendants, and there is a possibility that he could be your relative as well, no matter where you are in the world. Genetic studies have found a specific Y chromosome lineage that spread rapidly in the region during his time, probably due to his power and that of his descendants. A Dutch artist discovered a way to create clouds inside a room by carefully balancing temperature, humidity, and lighting. In fact, he regularly uses these clouds in his artwork. These clouds form when water vapor condenses in the air under very controlled conditions, imitating real atmospheric processes in a closed space and creating a striking visual experience. Every 14 days, a language dies. That is, a language disappears. Many of these languages vanish because younger generations stop speaking them, adopting more dominant languages. This implies the loss of cultures, traditions, and unique ways of seeing the world. It is estimated that more than half of current languages could disappear during this century, many of them without ever being fully documented or studied. Blind people smile even though they have never seen anyone else smile because it is a natural human reaction. Basic facial expressions are largely determined by biology, which shows that some emotions are expressed universally. Studies have observed that even people who are blind from birth display similar expressions in emotional situations, reinforcing the idea that they do not depend solely on visual learning. 99% of all species that have existed throughout history did not leave fossilized remains that survived to the present. Fossilization is an extremely rare process that requires very specific conditions, such as rapid burial and absence of oxygen. That is why the fossil record represents only a small fraction of all the life that has existed on Earth. Only 8% of the world's money exists in physical form. The rest is in computers. Most modern money is digital and moves between banks through electronic systems. This allows fast transactions on a global scale, although it also makes the financial system completely dependent on technology. IKEA is the 3rd largest consumer of wood in the world and sells 2 billion Swedish meatballs every year. The company uses enormous amounts of forest resources to produce furniture on a large scale, and its restaurants have become an important part of the shopping experience. The telephone number of Hitler's house appeared in the Berlin phone directory until 1945. It was 61 91. At that time, directories included public figures without major restrictions, and numbers were much shorter than they are today. With advances in technology and security, this type of information stopped being published so openly. After Hurricane Katrina in 2005, stories circulated about dolphins trained by the United States Navy that had supposedly gone missing in the Gulf of Mexico. These animals are part of real training programs for tasks such as detection and support in operations. This is a Mary River turtle, better known as the punk rock turtle. The green is actually algae growing on its head. These algae can help it camouflage in its aquatic environment, in addition to giving it that distinctive look that has made it famous. This species is native to Australia and can remain underwater for long periods, thanks to its ability to absorb oxygen through specialized structures in its body. A greeting card with sound has more computational power than the entire world in 1950. Early computers occupied entire rooms and had very limited capabilities compared to any modern circuit. Even the simplest chips today can perform millions of operations per second in a tiny space. This is a ship that transports ships transporting ships. I will let you think about that for a minute. These enormous vessels are designed to move other ships or maritime structures, showing how far modern naval engineering can scale. Some can partially submerge their decks to load platforms or entire ships, functioning as true floating ports in the middle of the ocean. Before Scar from The Lion King had the scar on his face, his real name was Taka, which means trash in Swahili. This detail comes from extended materials and versions of the story, where his past is explored and how his name changes after certain events that shape his character. Benjamin Franklin was not trusted to write the Declaration of Independence of the United States because it was feared he would hide a joke in it. Although it is a popular anecdote, Franklin did participate in the process as part of the committee, contributing ideas and revisions along with other leaders of the time. People in the Victorian era in the United Kingdom did not have money to buy chimney cleaners. Therefore, instead, they threw live geese down their chimneys because clearly that was the easiest solution. Very smart people. In reality, the most common method was to use child chimney sweeps, a dangerous practice that was eventually banned for health and safety reasons. Astronomers using the Hubble Space Telescope have discovered a deep blue planet 63 light-years away where it rains glass. In this extreme world, winds reach enormous speeds, causing glass particles to move horizontally at high velocity. A 51-year-old Brazilian priest tied himself to a chair with 1,000 helium balloons to cross the ocean, but he got lost and was later found dead. His name was Adelir Antonio de Carli, and in 2008, he was attempting a flight to raise funds for charitable causes. He lost contact with the ground during the journey, and months later, his body was found in the sea off the coast of Brazil. Originally, George Lucas wanted Tupac to play the role of the Jedi Mace Windu in Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, in 1996, but he was killed before his audition, and the role was given to Samuel L. Jackson. According to later statements, Tupac had shown interest in acting and was looking to diversify his career, which would have notably changed the tone of the character and his presence in the saga. In ancient Rome, they discovered that parrots could talk and taught them to say, "Hail Caesar," but when they got bored of this, they started eating them instead. Exotic birds were highly valued among Roman elites, both as curious pets and for their culinary value in banquets. There were even specialized trainers who taught words to the birds, and their price could be very high, as they were imported from distant regions such as India and North Africa. There is a massive cloud of water vapor floating in space that is at least 140 trillion times larger than all of Earth's oceans combined, and 100,000 times larger than the Sun. This cloud surrounds a distant quasar and contains enough water to fill countless solar systems, suggesting that water has been present in the universe since very early stages of its formation. An active volcano in Japan became sadly known because many people traveled there for sensitive personal reasons. The situation became so concerning that, for a time, measures were established to discourage these trips, such as restrictions on the sale of one-way tickets to the island where the volcano was located, and campaigns to offer help to those who needed it. Most lipsticks contain fish scales. This is due to guanine, a shiny compound obtained from scales that gives that pearlescent effect in some cosmetic products, although today there are also synthetic alternatives. The human brain receives 11 million bits of information every second, but is only aware of 40. Most processing happens unconsciously, allowing irrelevant stimuli to be filtered out and focus only on what is important. This mechanism is essential to avoid sensory overload. There is an Adidas shoe store in Amsterdam that is shaped like a giant shoebox. Its striking design makes it a tourist attraction, combining creative architecture with the brand's visual identity. This type of concept is part of marketing strategies that aim to offer memorable visual experiences to visitors. A coal power plant releases 100 times more radiation into the environment than a nuclear power plant. This happens because coal contains small amounts of uranium and thorium that are released when it is burned. Some of these radioactive materials end up dispersed in the air and in the ash left after combustion. Dolphins sleep with only half of their brain at a time, so they are always half-conscious, otherwise they would drown. This type of sleep allows them to continue breathing voluntarily and remain alert to possible dangers in their environment. In the 19th century, there was a rather strange medical method used to try to revive people who had drowned. It consisted of introducing tobacco smoke into the body using a special device, with the idea of stimulating breathing. Today, this procedure is seen as a historical curiosity of medicine and, of course, is no longer used. If the sun were reduced to the size of a white blood cell, the Milky Way would be the size of the United States. This comparison helps visualize the enormous scale of our galaxy, which contains hundreds of billions of stars separated by immense distances within a vast, almost empty space. Tupac Shakur auditioned for the role of Bubba, the shrimp fisherman for the movie Forrest Gump. The role ultimately went to McKelty Williamson, who played Forrest's friend in Vietnam. Tupac was already beginning to act in films at that time, and shortly after would appear in movies such as Juice and Poetic Justice. Whips make a cracking sound because the tip moves faster than the speed of sound, creating a small sonic boom. This phenomenon occurs when energy concentrates at the tip, accelerating it to supersonic speeds in a fraction of a second. It is one of the few everyday examples where the sound barrier is broken, producing a shock wave similar, on a small scale, to that of a supersonic aircraft. In the 12th century, the Danish army consisted of 7 soldiers. This fact usually refers to very specific or symbolic records in times of relative peace, since in periods of war, armies were much larger and formed by recruited peasants and warriors. At that time, military strength depended more on rapid mobilization than on standing armies. Skittles and gummy candies contain insect cocoons, which are used to coat the candies and give them that special shine known as shellac. This material comes from insect secretions and is used in small amounts to give them a glossy finish and protect their surface. Shellac, also called confectioner's glaze, has been used for decades in food and other products for its ability to form a protective coating that is safe for consumption. In 1969, Apollo 11 returned from the moon in half the time it took to travel from Boston to New York by stagecoach in 1769. The space journey took only a few days, while the land trip in colonial times could take nearly a week, depending on the weather, road conditions, and horse changes. Snails can sleep for up to 3 years. This occurs in extreme conditions of drought or cold, entering a state of inactivity to conserve energy. During this time, they reduce their vital functions to a minimum until the environment becomes favorable again. Only one raven survived in the royal palace during the largest bombing against England in World War II. All the others died from stress. At the Tower of London, there is a belief that if the ravens disappear, the kingdom will fall, so several are always kept under care. During the bombings, their protection was reinforced to prevent the tradition from being threatened. Kurt Cobain married Courtney Love in pajamas. The ceremony took place in Hawaii in 1992, and he wore green pajamas because he did not have a proper suit at the time. It was a simple and improvised wedding, consistent with his relaxed and unconventional style. Blue's Clues was one of the first television shows to use software like Photoshop and After Effects for its animations. It was able to produce episodes up to 4 times faster than traditional methods. Not even the creators of this software thought those results were possible. This approach allowed the combination of digital animation with live action more efficiently, marking an early transition toward the techniques that now dominate children's television production. Humans and giraffes have only 7 vertebrae in their necks, which is surprising considering that giraffe necks are much larger. The difference lies in the size of each vertebra, which in giraffes is much longer, allowing them to reach leaves high in the trees. In 2012, Apple had more money in the bank than the United States government. Some of those dollars probably came from your pocket in 2012. At that time, the company accumulated enormous cash reserves thanks to its global sales, which made it one of the most valuable companies in the world and an example of the financial power that large technology companies can reach. You can buy a replica of the light cycle from Tron Legacy that is completely street legal for $55,000. These versions include special lighting and futuristic designs, although their functionality is similar to that of a conventional motorcycle adapted for everyday use. Wombats, these funny animals, produce cube-shaped poop. Wombats are the only known animals that produce feces in the shape of cubes. This happens because of the particular shape of their intestines and the way their muscles contract during digestion. It is believed that this shape helps prevent the feces from rolling away when they use them to mark territory. The fur of a polar bear is actually not white, but transparent. It reflects light, which makes it appear white. Underneath, its skin is black, which helps it absorb heat from the sun in extremely cold environments, improving its ability to survive in the Arctic. In addition, its dense fur and a thick layer of fat act as insulation, allowing it to retain heat even in extremely low temperatures and swim in icy waters for long periods. Less than 5% of blind or visually impaired people can read Braille. This is due to several factors, such as limited access to specialized education and the growing use of audio technologies and screen readers, which have changed how many people with visual disabilities access information. In addition, learning Braille requires time and constant practice, and not everyone has access to proper materials or instruction from an early age. There are 7 different types of twins: identical, fraternal, semi-identical, mirror image, mixed chromosome, superfetation, and superfecundation. Each type arises from different forms of embryonic development, resulting in genetic variations and particular physical characteristics. 70% of jungle animals depend on eating figs to survive. Figs are considered a keystone species in many tropical forests because they produce fruit several times a year. This means that even when other plants do not have food available, figs continue feeding birds, monkeys, bats, and many other animals. In addition, each fig species is usually linked to a specific wasp that pollinates it, forming a unique relationship that maintains the balance of the ecosystem. The strongest muscle in the human body, relative to its size, is the tongue. However, this claim is debated, as several muscles compete for that title depending on the function. The tongue stands out for its endurance and precision, being essential for speaking, chewing, and swallowing constantly throughout the day. In reality, it is made up of a group of muscles that work together, allowing it to perform very complex movements without tiring easily. The telephone code for Russia is 007. This international prefix is used to make calls to the country from abroad and is part of the global numbering system established to facilitate international communications. It was assigned within the worldwide numbering plan and has remained even after political changes in the region. In 1996, DC and Marvel Comics published a crossover series where Wolverine and Batman became a single character called Dark Claw, or Logan Wayne. This story was part of the Amalgam Comics event, in which several heroes from both publishers were merged, creating hybrid versions with combined abilities and origins. The screwdriver was invented 100 years before the screw. It was originally used to remove embedded nails or something like that. Similar tools already existed since the 15th century in Europe and were used to open boxes or remove difficult nails. Metal screws did not become common until the Industrial Revolution, when mass production made it possible to manufacture them with precision. Astronauts become taller in space due to the lack of gravity. Without constant pressure on the spine, the discs between the vertebrae expand, which can increase height by several centimeters. This effect is temporary and disappears upon returning to Earth. In addition, during this process they may also experience back discomfort, as muscles and ligaments adapt to the new posture without the body's usual weight. There are 5.9 calories in the glue of a postage stamp. Although it is not recommended to consume it, that small amount of energy comes from the sugars and compounds used in the adhesive, designed to activate with moisture. In more modern versions, many adhesives no longer require saliva, but they still use compounds that are safe for human contact. Putting sugar on a wound or cut will greatly reduce pain and speed up the healing process. It is a traditional practice that has been mentioned in some contexts, but it is not a recommended method today. Although sugar may have properties that inhibit bacterial growth, its use without medical supervision can cause irritation or infections, so it is better to use proper and safe treatments. Susanna Hoffs, lead singer of the rock band The Bangles, recorded the song Eternal Flame completely naked. This was because the producer played a prank on her, telling her that Olivia Newton-John did the same thing when recording. Hoffs took it seriously and decided to try it to feel more relaxed during the session. Eternal Flame later became one of the band's biggest hits in the late 1980s. There are 150 stanzas in the Greek national anthem, making it the longest national anthem in the world. To put that into perspective, the national anthems of Canada and the United States each have only 4 verses. However, in practice, only 2 stanzas are performed at official events, since the full version would be too long and can last several minutes if sung in its entirety. After Netflix released Season 3 of House of Cards, the bandwidth required to maintain the service of this site increased from 30% to 45% of the total bandwidth in the United States. The release of full seasons at the same time boosted massive streaming consumption, especially during nighttime hours, consolidating Netflix as one of the largest consumers of internet traffic in the country. Sunflowers can be used to clean radioactive waste. Their stems and leaves absorb and store contaminants. This is also the reason why the sunflower is the international symbol of nuclear disarmament. The word gasoline does not come from gas. It comes from Castle, from John Castle, founder of Castle L&C Corporation, who were the first to sell it commercially. In the 19th century, this fuel was mainly sold as a solvent or cleaning product. It was not until the popularization of the automobile in the early 20th century that gasoline became one of the most important fuels in the world. The song Happy Birthday is more than 100 years old and is now in the public domain. For decades, Warner Chappell Music claimed to own its rights and charged royalties for its use, especially in movies and television shows. However, in 2015, a court in the United States determined that this claim was not valid, and since then, anyone can sing it or use it freely without paying anything. After 2 weeks of wearing a pair of jeans, a colony of 1,000 bacteria will have developed in the front, 2,000 in the back, and 10,000 bacteria in the crotch. Most of these bacteria are harmless and come from human skin, although over time they can produce odors. Factors such as climate, physical activity, and hygiene influence the amount and type of microorganisms present. The Philippine island of Luzon contains a lake that contains an island that contains a lake that contains another island. This phenomenon occurs in Taal Lake, creating a layered geographic formation that is considered one of the most complex and curious in the world. It is an active volcanic caldera, where these formations emerged over multiple eruptions and changes in water levels over time. A marshmallow would begin to melt due to air resistance friction at speeds of nearly 1,242 miles per hour. At those speeds, the compression of the air in front of the object generates extreme heat, similar to what happens to meteorites when they enter the atmosphere. The lighter was invented 10 years before the match. Early models used chemical reactions to generate a constant spark, although they were bulkier and less practical. Over time, matches became more popular because they were cheaper and easier to carry in everyday life. The eruption of the Krakatoa volcano produced the loudest sound ever recorded. The reverberation traveled around the world 7 times. It could be heard 4,038 miles away, and people who were 9 miles away or closer lost their hearing permanently. The explosion of 1883 was so powerful that it generated pressure waves recorded by barometers all over the planet for days. The University of Victoria in British Columbia, Canada, offers a course on the science of Batman. It uses the Dark Knight to explain the human condition and the limitations of the human mind and body, analyzing which aspect of the character could be possible in real life. This type of course combines popular culture with science to make learning more engaging and accessible to students. The interior of the International Space Station is similar in size to that of a 5-bedroom house. A 5-bedroom house that travels at 25,666 feet per second. Inside, 6 astronauts usually live and work, carrying out scientific experiments in microgravity. The station orbits Earth approximately every 90 minutes, which means its crew can see sunrise and sunset about 16 times in a single day. Hummingbirds are the only animals that can fly backward. This is possible because their wings move in a figure-8 pattern, generating lift both in forward and backward motion. They can also hover in the air while feeding on nectar with great precision. If you put all the sea salt on land, it would have a thickness of 492 feet. The oceans contain enormous amounts of dissolved mineral salts, mainly sodium chloride. If all that salt were extracted and distributed evenly across the land surface, it would form a surprisingly thick layer that would cover entire continents. The Hudson Bay area in Canada has less gravity than the rest of the Earth. Scientists do not know exactly why, but they have the hypothesis that it could have something to do with convection occurring in the Earth's mantle. Words in the Arabic language are written from right to left, but Arabic numerals, the ones most of us use, are written from left to right. That means that when a text contains many numbers, it has to be read in both directions at the same time. This mixed system is handled naturally by those who master the language, as the brain adapts to switching directions without difficulty, especially in contexts such as dates, prices, or technical figures. The first internet domain name ever registered was symbolics.com on March 15, 1985, and it still exists today. It was registered by a computer company and marked the beginning of the domain system that now organizes much of the web. At that time, the internet was used almost exclusively by academic and government institutions, so this registration represented a key step toward the commercial and public expansion of the network. This is not a painting. It is a completely real photograph that has not been retouched or edited in any way. What you are seeing are camel thorn trees in Namib Knocklift Park in Namibia. The background is a sand dune and the ground is blue due to the shadow of the morning sun. All the restaurants that appeared in the second season of Kitchen Nightmares have gone bankrupt and closed their doors. Kitchen Nightmares is a show where an ill-tempered chef arrives to fix struggling restaurants and leaves them like new. However, many of these businesses already had debt, poor management, or difficult locations, so the changes made on the show were not always enough to sustain them in the long term. It is physically impossible for a pig to look up at the sky. This is due to the structure of its neck and the position of its spine, which limit upward movement. Although they can slightly raise their heads, they do not have the flexibility needed to look directly at the sky like other animals. In a study by the University of Chicago in 1915, it was concluded that the easiest color to detect at a distance is yellow, which is why it is the most popular color for taxis. Its high visibility helps them be easily identifiable in urban traffic. Only 1 to 2% of the entire world population are natural redheads. This trait is due to a specific genetic variation and is more common in regions of Northern Europe. In addition, red-haired people tend to have more sun-sensitive skin and higher vitamin D production. A flamingo can only eat with its head upside down. Its beak is designed as a specialized filter that separates small organisms from water and mud. By inverting its head, it maximizes the efficiency of this system, allowing it to feed on algae, crustaceans, and other microorganisms. 10% of the electricity in the United States comes from dismantled Soviet atomic bombs. This is due to the megatons to megawatts program, in which highly enriched uranium from nuclear weapons was converted into fuel for nuclear power plants. For years, a significant portion of the country's electricity came from material that had once been intended for weapons. Titanic II was announced as a modern replica of the RMS Titanic, promoted by the company Blue Star Line. Although it was originally planned to set sail in 2016, the project has faced numerous delays and pauses. Over the years, new plans and tentative dates have been presented, but so far its construction and official launch have not been completed. The word gas was invented by the Flemish chemist Jan Baptist van Helmont. He was going to call it blas, but people did not like it. Van Helmont studied invisible substances released during chemical reactions and chose gas, inspired by the Greek word chaos, to describe something that expanded and had no fixed form, something revolutionary for the chemistry of his time. There is a swing on the edge of a cliff in Ecuador that has no safety measures, hanging from a treehouse with a view of an active volcano, known as the swing at the end of the world. It has become popular among tourists seeking adrenaline, although using it involves considerable risks due to the lack of protection. Democracy in ancient Greece lasted only 185 years. The democratic system of Athens began around the 5th century before Christ and ended after internal conflicts and external conquests, especially with Macedonian domination. Even so, it laid the foundations for many modern political principles, such as citizen participation and public debate. German doctors were the first to identify the link between smoking and lung cancer. In fact, in the 1930s, some of the first epidemiological studies on the topic were conducted, and early anti-tobacco campaigns were promoted, although within a very particular historical context. No one has ever directly seen an atom with their eyes or with an optical microscope. They are far too small for that. However, since the late 20th century, scientists have managed to obtain images of individual atoms using advanced techniques such as the scanning tunneling microscope and the atomic force microscope. These instruments do not photograph atoms like a camera, but they allow scientists to map their position and create very precise images of how they are arranged on material surfaces. The coco de mer from the Maldives is the largest seed in the world. It can weigh more than 66 pounds and takes several years to fully mature. It grows on the palm known as the coco de mer, a rare species found naturally on only a few islands, making it a very exclusive fruit. All the batteries in the world combined would store only 10 minutes of total global energy consumption. This reflects the enormous global energy demand and the difficulty of storing electricity on a large scale, one of the main challenges for the transition to renewable energy. That is why alternatives such as grid storage, next-generation batteries, and systems like pumped hydro are being researched to balance supply and demand. Humans have collectively spent more time playing World of Warcraft than existing as a species separate from chimpanzees. 5.9 million years. Well done, humans. Well done. This figure comes from adding up all the hours played by millions of users since its release in 2004. It is a curious example of how accumulated time in digital activities can reach magnitudes comparable to evolutionary timescales. Natural black roses are incredibly rare and exist only in Halfeti, Turkey. Their dark color is due to a unique combination of soil and water conditions from a nearby river. In reality, during certain times of the year, they can appear a very deep red that looks black. In 2013, a resident of Michigan, United States, had a demolition order on his house. To avoid it, he came up with a brilliant plan, which consisted of switching his house number with his neighbors. It worked because his house survived and the other one was torn down. The mistake went unnoticed until after the demolition, which led to lawsuits and criticism toward the authorities for not properly verifying the address before carrying out the order. Of all the animals on Earth, the mosquito has contributed to more deaths than any other animal. This is because it is the main transmitter of diseases such as malaria, dengue, and Zika. Throughout history, it is estimated that these insects have caused the deaths of billions of people, far surpassing any predator. China is the largest producer of Bibles. In a factory in Nanjing, more than 1 million are produced each month. This production supplies numerous countries and is carried out mainly in collaboration with international organizations, making China a key player in the global distribution of this book. A large portion of these Bibles are exported and manufactured with high printing standards, allowing costs to remain low for mass distribution. These are the Rainbow Mountains of Zhangye Dangxia in China. They are multicolored due to layers of densely packed minerals in the rock. Erosion and the passage of time have exposed these bands, creating a unique natural landscape that looks hand-painted. For 48 years, people had to use a hammer and chisel to open cans when they wanted to eat. The can opener was not invented until 1858. Canned food had been created decades earlier to feed soldiers and sailors. In fact, the first cans were so thick that it was sometimes easier to shoot them or hit them with heavy tools. A typical graphite pencil can draw a line 35 miles long. This is equivalent to writing tens of thousands of words before it is completely worn down. The exact duration depends on the pressure used when writing and the type of paper, but under normal conditions it can be used for a long time. Due to rationing during World War II, cocoa was scarce in Italy, so a baker created an alternative chocolate spread that would later be called Nutella. This initial version mixed hazelnuts with cocoa to extend the flavor, giving rise to one of the most popular products in the world. Since the time of Pythagoras, at least by the year 500 before Christ, no educated person believed that the Earth was flat, including Christopher Columbus. Greek philosophers such as Aristotle had already gathered several pieces of evidence of its spherical shape, such as the curved shadow of the Earth during lunar eclipses and the change in constellations when traveling south. It is impossible to tickle yourself. This is because your cerebellum warns the rest of your brain that you are about to tickle yourself, so it ignores the resulting sensation. This mechanism helps distinguish between self-generated and external stimuli, which is important for reacting to potential threats. More than 7,000 people die and 1,500,000 are injured each year due to poor handwriting by doctors. This issue has been highlighted in studies on medical errors, where illegible prescriptions can lead to confusion in medications or incorrect doses. The digitization of prescriptions has helped reduce these types of risks in many countries. Sweden recycles so efficiently that it actually has to import trash from Norway to feed its energy plants that convert waste into energy. This system allows it to generate electricity and heating, reducing the amount of waste in landfills and making the most of materials. In addition, much of the waste is incinerated in a controlled way with advanced filters, which minimizes emissions and contributes to a more sustainable energy model. Hawaii has the only royal palace in the United States that was used as an official residence by a reigning monarch. In reality, Iolani Palace was the residence of the last Hawaiian kings in the 19th century, and today functions as a historical museum, preserving original objects and reflecting the former monarchy of the archipelago. The bumblebee bat, also known as Kitty's hog-nosed bat, is the smallest bat in the world. It weighs about 0.07 ounces and fits easily in the palm of a hand. It lives in caves in Thailand and Myanmar, and its tiny size makes it especially vulnerable to habitat loss. The total surface area of human lungs is 750 square feet. It is approximately the same area as one side of a tennis court. This enormous surface is due to millions of small sacs called alveoli, where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs, allowing breathing to be efficient even at rest. The water flow of the Ganges, one of the largest rivers in the Indian subcontinent, is a state secret in India. This is related to international agreements on water use, especially with neighboring countries such as Bangladesh, where the distribution of the flow is a sensitive issue both politically and environmentally. This is an underwater waterfall located off the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean and is caused by water and sand falling off the coastal shelf. In reality, it is an optical illusion created by currents that drag sediments, giving the appearance of a deep drop beneath the ocean. An octopus has 3 hearts, 9 brains, and blue blood. 2 hearts pump blood to the gills and 1 to the rest of the body. Its 9 brains include a nervous system distributed in its arms, allowing it to perform complex movements and react almost independently. In 1903, the first year Gillette entered the market, they sold only 168 razors. However, the company adopted an innovative business model by selling the handles at a low cost and making profits from disposable blades, which drove its growth in the following years. An elephant weighs less than the tongue of a blue whale. The tongue of this enormous animal can weigh several tons and is so large that it can be comparable to the weight of an adult elephant, reflecting the impressive size of the blue whale. The smallest volcano in the world is located in the state of Puebla in Mexico. It is called Cuexcomate, and it is an inactive volcano that measures only 43 feet in height. In reality, many geologists consider it more of a geyser or a volcanic vent formed by an ancient eruption. It is located within an urban area and has a staircase that allows visitors to go down inside it. In case you never noticed, the Mona Lisa has no eyebrows or eyelashes. This is partly due to the artistic techniques of the time, where these details were often not emphasized, and also to possible restoration or deterioration over time that may have removed finer features of the original portrait. If a billiard ball were the size of the planet Earth, it would have mountains 3 times higher than Mount Everest. This means that the Earth is very smooth and even on its surface, despite having so many mountains. In proportion to its size, the planet's irregularities are very small, which makes its shape close to a sphere. There's a Pizza Hut perfume that smells like a fresh Pizza Hut pizza box opening when you spray it. That is one way to impress on a date. This type of product was released as a promotional novelty and became popular for how unusual its scent is. It was introduced in limited quantities as part of a marketing campaign, showing how brands use creative ideas to capture public attention. The symbol for turning devices on and off contains a 1 and a 0. These numbers replaced the English words on and off to avoid any misunderstanding due to language barriers. The design is based on the binary system used in electronics, where 1 represents on and 0 represents off, and it was standardized internationally so that anyone can understand it regardless of language. England is smaller than the state of Florida by more than 15,000 square miles. Despite this, England has a much larger population, making it one of the most densely populated regions in Europe, with historic cities and highly developed infrastructure. If Finding Nemo were real, when Nemo's mother and siblings died, either Nemo or his father would have had to become female to form a breeding pair, because clownfish are sequential hermaphrodites, which is how they perpetuate the species. Yes, childhood ruined. On her 120th birthday, Jean Calment, the longest-lived person of all time, said that she only had one wrinkle, and that she was sitting on it. An interesting sense of humor for a 120-year-old woman. She lived to 122 years and maintained a relatively active life for much of her longevity. The island of Okinawa in Japan has more than 450 people who live beyond 100 years and is known as the healthiest place on Earth. This phenomenon has been linked to its balanced diet, constant physical activity, and strong social bonds, factors that contribute to greater longevity. It takes a photon 40,000 years to travel from the center of the sun to its surface, but only 8.3 minutes to travel from there to Earth. This is because inside the sun, light constantly collides with particles of plasma and changes direction billions of times. Once it finally escapes into space, it travels freely at the speed of light. Apples, peaches, plums, strawberries, raspberries, cherries, and almonds belong to the rose family. This family, called Rosaceae, includes a wide variety of flowering plants, many of them important for human consumption and cultivated for thousands of years. They share characteristics such as five-petaled flowers and similar structures in their fruits, revealing their common evolutionary origin and great diversity within a single botanical family. The sidekick of the Lone Ranger, the Native American called Tonto, had to be called Toro in Spanish-speaking countries because Tonto was considered offensive. In English, the name Tonto did not carry the same negative meaning, but when translated, it was changed to avoid offensive interpretations. This type of adaptation was common in older dubbing to fit cultural context. The company Terrafugia introduced the concept of a flying vehicle called TFX, designed as a car capable of vertical takeoff and landing with a high degree of automation. Although it was initially projected to be available around 2015, development has faced numerous technical and regulatory challenges. Disneyland does not sell chewing gum. This is because Walt Disney did not want guests to feel uncomfortable stepping on gum bought in the park. This decision also makes cleaning and maintenance easier, keeping the streets cleaner than in many other public spaces. Toasters were banned in Havana, Cuba until 2008. For years, many household appliances were restricted as part of regulations on electricity consumption in the country. After policy changes, the sale of these devices was allowed, along with other more modern household equipment. The grammar pedantry syndrome is a form of obsessive-compulsive disorder in which those who have it feel the need to correct every grammatical error they see. Although it is not an official clinical diagnosis, it describes a real behavior associated with the need for order and precision in language. Between 1960 and 1977, the secret code that authorized presidents of the United States to launch nuclear missiles was 000000000. The code belonged to the security system of the Minuteman missiles and was kept that way for years to avoid delays in case of an urgent launch during the Cold War. Hippopotamus sweat is red in color and contains a pigment that works as a natural sunscreen. It is not actually sweat, but a secretion that also has antibacterial properties, helping protect their skin from intense sun and infections in the water. In the 18th century, the French Navy buried their dead in the holds of their ships. This was mainly done during long voyages, when it was not possible to perform a burial on land. However, burial at sea was also common, a practice that became a naval tradition in many fleets. In some cases, bodies were wrapped in cloth or sacks with weight to ensure they would sink, following rituals that varied depending on the time and the crew. The skin of a honey badger is extremely thick and resistant, which helps protect it from predator attacks in the wild. Thanks to this characteristic, it is known for its great bravery and for not being easily intimidated by other animals. In addition, its skin is loose enough to allow it to twist inside it and counterattack even when it is grabbed, further increasing its defensive ability. The parents of J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, met on a train at King's Cross Station in 1964. Rowling used King's Cross Station in her books as a gateway to the wizarding world. In the story, from platform 9 3/4, students access the Hogwarts Express, turning a real place into one of the most iconic settings of the saga. Panthers are not a real species. They are jaguars and leopards with melanism, which is the opposite of albinism. Melanism produces an excess of dark pigment that makes the fur appear completely black. If observed in good light, the animal's spots can still be distinguished. And the pink panther, by the way, is just an animated character. Sharks lose more than 30,000 teeth over the course of their lives. Their teeth constantly regenerate in rows, so when one falls out, another quickly replaces it. This system allows them to always maintain sharp teeth to capture prey. Some species can replace teeth in a matter of days, giving them a key evolutionary advantage to survive and hunt in different marine environments. You are only 3 times more likely to die in a plane crash than to be eaten by a cougar. Both events are extremely rare, which makes the comparison more curious than relevant in everyday life. The real probabilities of both cases are very low for most people. Each year, tourists throw around €1,100,000 into the Trevi Fountain in Rome, which the city uses to fund a supermarket for the poor. This money is regularly collected and allocated to social programs and food assistance. The tradition of tossing coins is associated with the wish to return to Rome, making the fountain one of the most visited spots in the city. Scorpions can hold their breath underwater for up to 6 days. This is possible thanks to their extremely slow metabolism, which allows them to minimize their oxygen consumption. In cold conditions or at rest, they can survive long periods without air before needing to return to the surface. In the Formula One Championship in 2009, 12% of the drivers were named Sebastian. That season included several drivers with that name, such as Sebastian Vettel and Sebastian Bourdais, which made it amusing to hear the same name repeated constantly in broadcasts. If the human eye were a digital camera, it would have a resolution of about 576 megapixels. This figure is a theoretical estimate, since human vision does not function like a traditional camera, but it helps illustrate the incredible level of detail the eye can perceive. In addition, the brain processes visual information in real time, continuously adjusting focus, light, and motion in a way that no digital camera can exactly replicate. In 1923, a jockey had a heart attack in the middle of a race that caused his death, but he won anyway. The jockey, Frank Hayes, suffered the attack while riding the horse Sweet Kiss during a race in New York. Because his body remained in the saddle until crossing the finish line, the horse was declared the winner. The largest family in the world is located in the Indian state of Mizoram and belongs to a man named Ziona Chana, with a total of 39 wives, 94 children, 14 daughters-in-law, and 33 grandchildren, all living under the same roof. A magnetar, a type of neutron star, has a magnetic field so strong that it would be lethal at a distance of 621 miles. It would affect the chemistry of the human body, practically tearing you apart. If one of these were at half the distance of the moon, all the credit cards on Earth would be wiped. Most of the dust in your house is made up of your own dead skin. It also includes clothing fibers, pollen, hair, and particles from outside. Even so, skin cells represent a significant portion, as the human body constantly renews its outer layer. The average person falls asleep in just about 7 minutes. This time can vary depending on the level of fatigue, stress, or environment. Falling asleep too quickly on a regular basis can also be a sign of sleep deprivation. Under normal conditions, taking between 10 and 20 minutes is considered healthy, as it indicates that the body is relaxed but not excessively exhausted. Light travels 186,000 miles per second, while a raindrop falls at only a few miles per hour. This enormous difference explains why we see lightning almost instantly, but hear thunder several seconds later. Sound travels much more slowly through the air, so the delay can even help estimate how far away the storm occurred. Bull shark embryos fight each other in their mother's womb until only one survivor remains, and that is the shark that is born. This phenomenon is known as intrauterine cannibalism and ensures that the strongest individual has a greater chance of survival in a demanding marine environment from the very beginning. On a clear night, the human eye can detect a match being lit from 50 miles away. This comparison is used to explain the extraordinary sensitivity of the eye in dark conditions. Cells called rods in the retina can detect extremely small amounts of light, allowing very faint light sources to be perceived at great distances. The city of New York paid $5 million in 1853 for the land that is now Central Park. Today, that property is worth $530 billion. That is a pretty good investment. The park covers more than 800 acres in the heart of Manhattan and, in addition to its real estate value, provides enormous environmental, social, and economic benefits to the city. A medium-sized cloud weighs the same as 80 elephants. Although they appear light and floating, they are made up of millions of tiny water droplets suspended in the air. Their enormous mass is distributed over a very large volume, which allows them to remain suspended thanks to rising air currents. When people visited the first supermarkets, they were afraid to take products from the shelves because they thought they would be accused of theft. Before self-service existed, stores operated with counters where the customer asked the clerk for each product. The first modern supermarket opened in the United States in the 1930s.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.